Have you ever wondered what's wrong with you? I mean, why can't you just calm down? Why are you always so overreactive? Why you shut down when you need to show up? I want to share something with you that might change the way that you talk to yourself about those moments. There's actually nothing wrong with you. Your nervous system is doing exactly what it was trained to do. Hi, I'm ZGALA, and I've spent the last 20 plus years as a somatic therapist helping people learn to regulate their nervous systems. I've had these hands on thousands of nervous systems, anxious ones, frozen ones, ones that couldn't stop fighting inside. And here's what I've learned. Your nervous system isn't broken. It's brilliant. It learned how to keep you alive. The problem is it might be still running software that ended years or even decades ago. Think about this. If you grew up in a household where you had to stay hyper aware of someone else's mood in order to stay safe, your nervous system learned to be like a smoke detector or a thermostat. And it probably served you very well since you're still alive today. But that nervous system that learned how to be a thermostat or a smoke detector didn't stop detecting when you moved into another house. And in fact, there's a high probability that you got so used to being that smoke detector or thermostat that you moved into another house or relationship that makes it necessary to keep being hypervigilant. Not always, but many of us do repeat the same patterns that we learned early in our childhood. So I want you to know that that's normal. It's part of being human. And the good news is that your nervous system is not fixed. You've probably heard the phrase, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. And while it's true that it's harder to teach our nervous systems, the more ingrained certain patterns become, it's not impossible. Science has shown that our nervous systems are actually much more plastic or changeable than we used to think. So our nervous systems are shaped by experiences, and the first 7 years of our lives are the most formidable. We do form the most connections in our brains and in the rest of our nervous system in those 0 to 7 years. But it does continue throughout life. Your nervous system is a prediction machine, and it predicts danger based on what danger has looked like in the past. So if you have experienced a lot of danger in the past, your nervous system will begin to predict danger in the future, and you might even start to see danger where there isn't really danger, or even put yourself into dangerous situations as a sort of self-fulfilling prophecy. So while it is normal to have a nervous system that goes into fight or flight mode, that's a way of helping you survive. There are maladaptive ways that our nervous system learns to adapt throughout a lifetime. And this can lead to health issues, relationship issues, all sorts of problems later in life. Whether your nervous system is responding in a healthy, adaptive way or an unhealthy, maladaptive way really has to do with context. So what is healthy in one context might not be healthy in another context. It's not the reaction itself, but it is how accurate is your nervous system gauging what's going on right now. If you've ever had a reaction that seems disproportionate to the situation or been around someone who's having a reaction that seems disproportionate to the situation, that's because the nervous system is making predictions that are based on some past experiences. And so I think it's important to remember that, again, that's not a flaw. It doesn't mean that the nervous system is broken. It just means that it's responding out of context. And there are things we can do to help fix that, or at least make it a lot better. Hypervigilance in an unsafe home is a smart survival strategy. Hypervigilance in a safe relationship can be exhausting and confusing for everyone involved, and eventually can ruin a good relationship. Ask me how I know. So the behavior isn't the problem. The context has changed and the programming didn't get the memo. And that's the problem. So a big part of what I teach is how can we become more self-aware, more in tune with or aligned with our own nervous system responses. The reason it feels insulting when someone says, just relax, when you're starting to get revved up or upset is because you can't just relax when your nervous system has already been activated. And another big part of what I teach is how to use the body to regain control over the mind. A lot of therapies use what's called top-down therapy, which is using the mind to control the body, and that can be great in some circumstances, but especially when we are in an overwhelmed state or our nervous systems have switched over into that fight or flight state and we no longer have access to our brains, it can be helpful to be able to use the body to regain control of the brain. So the reason that just relax is so insulting is that you're asking someone to override survival programming with willpower. It's like asking someone to stop flinching or laughing when they're tickled or pinched. Even if they're able to suppress their reaction, it's going to fester, it's going to cause a cascade of chemistry in the body that is unhealthy. And in fact, they may become even more dysregulated from trying to suppress their reaction than just having that healthy reaction. Your body is trying to protect you. It's not trying to be dramatic or manipulative as some people might think. Our bodies remember things that our conscious brains don't always remember. As a body worker, I have seen countless examples of people having deep emotional reactions unlocked during body work. It was alarming the first few times it happened when I was first studying to be a body worker, but eventually I came to recognize that this is a sign of deep healing when we're unlocking these stored emotions in the body. Your body remembers things that you might not remember consciously, so your body's reactions might not always make sense to you. If you've ever experienced a panic attack, then you might be familiar with the way that sometimes our bodies can have emotional and visceral physical responses that are quite profound in ways that we don't fully understand. And this almost always has to do with that pre-programmed response to an inaccurate prediction based on previous experiences, sometimes things that we've blocked out and don't even remember at all. If your nervous system has learned the pattern of avoidance or anxiety and practiced it a lot of times, it becomes more and more natural, more and more likely that you will fall into that same pattern. And in fact, you can even become sort of addicted to the chemistry of that pattern and find yourself recreating the same patterns in your life in all sorts of different ways, which can be quite distressing. Again, ask me how I know. So even though it might seem like gaining control of our emotions through suppression is the best answer, it can actually lead us to put ourselves in harm's way when we learn to override our nervous system signaling frequently or habitually. It can take work to uncover what's really going on, but it isn't always necessary to uncover the reasons underneath our reactions in order to develop more resilience, or what I like to call emotional fitness. This is part of what I teach in the Human Reboot Dojo. So your nervous system has three main moves. It's got the fight or flight gas pedal, sympathetic activation. This shows up as anxiety, irritability, restlessness, not being able to sit still, racing thoughts, snapping at people, raising your voice. The body is mobilized for action. If your default mode is to get busy, get angry, or get out, then this is probably your jam. Strategy number 2 that our nervous systems often use is the freeze or shutdown, the dorsal vagal response. That's your emergency brake. It shows up as numbness, brain fog, exhaustion, disassociation. being out of your body or checking out, depression, flatness. The body is conserving energy for survival. If your stress response is to go blank, freeze, feel nothing, or want to sleep for 100 years, then this might be you. Strategy number 3 that our nervous systems use is the fawning or people-pleasing strategy. It's a sort of hybrid response. It's the negotiator. It shows up as over-apologizing, losing yourself in other people's needs, not knowing what you want, chronic accommodation for other people. The body has learned that safety comes through appeasing. If your first instinct is to make everyone else okay so that you might be okay, welcome to the club. None of these are incorrect or wrong, and most of us use all of these strategies at various times, but most of us will have a prominent strategy that our nervous systems have learned to default to. All of these strategies work at some point, and the question is not, how do I stop doing it? It's, do I need this strategy right now, in this moment, with these people, in this situation? Is this response appropriate to this situation in a way that's going to get me the life that I want? That's the real question. I've created a free nervous system self-assessment to help you figure out your default patterns, because knowing your go-to strategy is the first step in having a choice about it. And I'll drop the link if you want to dig deeper into your own wiring. Check that out. So how patterns get locked in. You may have heard of the book, The Body Keeps the Score. Very good book. And that is very accurate. Our bodies do keep the score. Trauma and stress lives in our body, not just in our conscious brains. As I mentioned, I've had experiences where deep tissue body work can unlock deep emotional issues that have been stuffed unconsciously into a person's body. Talking about our traumas can help, but it doesn't always release it. Neural pathways are like hiking trails or grooves in a record. You might have heard the phrase neurons that fire together, wire together. And this has to do with physical myelination of our neural pathways in our brains and in the rest of our bodies. Your nervous system takes the familiar path because it's efficient. And the more it takes that path, the more those neurons wire together and the more efficient and easy it becomes to take that path. So this is why we have the phrase, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, because it does become harder to change the longer you keep repeating certain patterns. New paths are possible, but they require repetition, not just insight, and sometimes a disruption of pattern. There have been some interesting studies with psychedelics that are being shown to increase the plasticity or the changeability of some of those neural pathways, and used under close therapeutic supervision, they might be the answer for some people to really make dramatic changes in those repeating patterns in the brain and in the nervous system. The reason that talk therapy alone is sometimes or even often not enough is because it's top down from the mind to the body. And sometimes, as I was explaining earlier, we need bottom up, especially if we're prone to being dysregulated. We don't have access to our higher thinking mind when we're dysregulated. And so it's an exercise in futility to talk about trauma, rev ourselves up into a traumatized state, and then try to use the brain to regulate the body. It just doesn't work for some of us. And this is what brought me to body work. It's why I do somatic therapy. This is why movement matters so much. Our emotions literally get stuck in our body, stored and then stuck in our body. That causes stagnation, which causes inflammation, which eventually can cause disease. All sorts of diseases can be traced back to some sort of stagnation in the body. I spent 20 plus years developing ways to help people work with their bodies to heal. I wrote a book last year. I published it called The Shift: Own Your Emotions, Own Your Life, which is basically everything I wish someone had told me about how to actually change these patterns. not just understand them. The link to that is in the description if you want to take a deeper dive. I also currently host resets in a community on the school platform called the Human Reboot Dojo, and you can get into that for free as well. Check it out. So the brain can change at any age. Neuroplasticity isn't just for kids. Every time you respond differently, you're building a new pathway. You're weakening old patterns and strengthening new patterns. And it just takes practice. You don't have to overhaul your whole nervous system overnight. Catching yourself even 1% or 10% sooner is progress. In fact, if you caught yourself 1% sooner, every week, you'd be 50% or so better off by a year from now. And that is a pretty significant difference if you have a pattern that is getting in the way of having the types of relationships that you want in your life. Remember, regulation isn't about never getting dysregulated. It's about improving your recovery time. The shift method is a way of processing your feelings without shaming yourself. You can't change what you can't see, and you can't see clearly when you're judging yourself for what you find. You will hide it from yourself. So one of the first steps is self-acceptance and self-appreciation. And like everything else I teach, it's a process. So here's what I would love for you to take away from this today. Your anxiety is not a character flaw. Your shutdown isn't laziness. Your people-pleasing isn't weakness. These are strategies your brilliant nervous system developed to keep you safe. And I'm really glad that it has. Now that you're here watching this, learning a little bit more about how it all works, you're already starting to build new pathways. Just becoming open to the possibility of change starts to create change. It's pretty neat, huh? Awareness is the first step, and you're already doing it. If you want to keep going with this, if you want to actually learn your own patterns and practice regulating them in real time with other humans, as I mentioned, I have a school group, a free community called the Human Reboot Dojo, where we go deeper into all this stuff. And you are welcome. Sharing tools and practices on this channel in a similar way that I share in the group, but in the group, you'll be around other humans who are figuring out their nervous systems too, which brings a whole other level of value to this work. Thanks for joining me today. I welcome your questions and comments. I'm ZGALA. Remember, your nervous system isn't broken. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.